Drivers, start your engines! The Lapped Traffic Podcast has brought you over 300 shows, driver and media interviews, awesome stories and entertainment, and one of the coolest fantasy leagues around. Get ready for another exciting season. Sit back, relax, and try not to get lapped. Now, here's your host, the Professor, Brendan Cross.
Oh, Lapped Traffic Nation, welcome to Season 8 of the Lapped Traffic Podcast and episode number 327. Yes, I am your host, the Professor, Brandon Crowd, and in the words of the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, what do you want to talk about, Lapped Traffic Nation? Oh, there is so much to talk about. How is everyone doing? It feels great to be down here back in the man cave recording in the podcast studio, a freshly clean podcast studio. Yes, I can't believe that it has been a little over 2 months since the last show, and boy, oh boy, how life has changed. First off, start with this. I hope everybody had an incredible holiday season and new year. Here we are almost a month into 2024 already, which is absolutely crazy. What's been going on with you guys? I hope you all are doing good. It's been nice chatting with some of you on social media throughout the off season. You know, there's been some Michigan football, there's been some Lions football, and I will get into all of that in just a little bit. We are down to just one football game left, which means Daytona is right around the corner. We got the Clash this weekend, which is just crazy and awesome. There is so much NASCAR stuff to dive into, and we'll get into that too. But like I said, it's been 2 months since the last show. A lot's happened, some of which you might been able to piece together with some of my posts on social media. But so here's the latest on my end. So if you recall, I got laid off from my job back in the end of October from the mortgage industry, which was a blessing as I was getting really burned out and went from a overly stressful work environment to a stressful checking account, but such is life there. And after about 2 weeks of not getting really any bites of substance from applications I was putting out and such, I decided to really make things fun and interesting and start my own small catering company, which I did, and we are good to go. It's called Three's a Crowd Catering, which is the world's most perfect slogan, with the pun of "Let the crowds cater your crowd," and I mean that just wrote itself, really did. I grew up in the catering business, very close friends of the family, which means they basically are family, owned a catering company that I spent a lot of time working at growing up, and as you guys know and have seen my posts over the years, if you've been around a minute, know how much I love to cook and, you know, fire up the smoker and all that kind of stuff. And we decided to, you know, jump head first. So in 2 months, I've literally created an entire business from scratch. Obviously, the name's done, licensing is done, insured, food safety certified, got a kitchen to rent out of, the website's built, menus are built, bank accounts set up, CPA's been met with, state sales tax is all set up, online invoicing, social media handles are created. So I'm ready to go. And if that wasn't enough, I've decided to do another podcast, which is going to be kicking off in a few weeks, called Dining in Detroit, which is going to kind of blog my journey so that I don't bore you guys with it here on the Lapped Traffic. So yeah, we're going to, you know, kind of, like I said, blog my journey in this process, as well as talking with local bar, restaurant, food truck owners and share their stories, as well as kind of, you know, doing some cross promotion to help get the Three's a Crowd Catering Company and info out there. So what's that mean for Lapped Traffic? Well, right now, my plan is pretty much kind of as last year was to do a show at least every other week. kind of let it just develop naturally. Last year was hard to do shows because work was so demanding, on top of the little guy, family, all that good stuff. And again, I have no idea what this year's schedule is going to look like. I might be busy. I definitely will have probably a lot more free time on my own to decide when I can record. So who knows? We might be able to do, back to the weekly that everybody was used to for so long. So we're just going to kind of have to see. But that said, we are here. We are back for season 8 of the Lap Traffic Podcast, which is crazy. I can't thank you all enough for your support. You might hear me drop the social media handles of the catering company and the Dining in Detroit podcast. I'm doing a giveaway to kind of help, just get a base of followers going. And I cleaned out the podcast room and stumbled across a framed, autographed Mark Martin number 8 frame. I mean, this is a big frame. And I'm like, this was just too perfect of a find. It's from when Mark Martin drove the 8. This is season 8 of the Lap Traffic Podcast. I didn't even know I had this thing. It was in a bin. And so I'm like, well, you know what? That's a perfect giveaway for season 8. And we're going to do that, and we'll give it away when we hit 8,000 followers. So we got 1,000 to go, basically. We're at like 7,000 and change. But, I felt that was good. And like I said, I'm doing a giveaway to help build the other handles following. I'm giving away a Kevin Harvick 124 diecast along with some Lap Traffic swag. So, what a better way to kick things off than free giveaways, which is awesome. So with that said, I think it's officially time to start talking some NASCAR for 2024. And there is no better person to do that with than with the first guest of the evening. Big news broke last night that his podcast, The Teardown, with Jordan Bianchi, Jeff Gluck is going to be on. If you missed the tweets that I put out about that, he's going to be on here in just a second. Big news to talk about with their podcast moving over to the Dirty Mo Network, which is awesome. So Jeff and I are going to go in depth on a lot of the off-season news and just, some changes and things of that nature. And then after that, if you want to dip out, by all means, because you're definitely going to want to stick around for Jeff Gluck. But after that, Aaron Studwell is going to be on. We've got a national championship to talk about. So, of course, we had to get the Dr. Aaron Studwell on. And then we'll close it out with last year's Lap Traffic Fantasy winner, Andrew Yu. And Lap Traffic Fantasy is back for the 8th year. Very much same format as last year. There's 2 minor rule changes. We'll get into that later in the show. But if you want to join, there is still time. It's free. There's free swag on the line. There's custom trophies, all that good stuff. All you have to do is send an email to fantasylaptraffic@gmail.com. Go to the website, thelaptrafficpodcast.com. It's all on there. And of course, I'll tweet stuff out, and it's not tweet; it's X, right? But it's Twitter still, right? At least that's what I'm calling it. So, all right, enough rambling. Let's get the legendary Jeff Gluck on the line. All right, Lap Traffic Nation, joining me on the line, making his 5th appearance on the show. He's a guy that needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyways. A legend in the garage, tweet-ups on social media, and is one of the great NASCAR writers from The Athletic. Welcome back, Mr. Jeff Gluck. Sir, what's up, man? How are you?
I can't believe that you said it's been my 5th time. Is that really true?
Yeah,
wow.
fifth time on. We're kicking off season 8 of the Lap Traffic Podcast tonight. So thank you for being here with us on a big news day for you as well. So all kinds of good things going on.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on 8 years. That is, I think, 8 years ago when you start a podcast, it's pretty new. And, it was still sort of in a space that was not really getting established yet. But you were still early to it,
Yeah.
And a lot of people, it's these days when it seems like everybody has a podcast, it's sort of like, oh, well, that's a no-brainer or something. But back then, for you to do that, that was, sort of taking a chance. And then the other part of it is to have the longevity with that, I think is really impressive because so many people, they might say, oh, that sounds fun. I could do a podcast. And you do it for few weeks or a few months or even a few years if people make it that long, and then, sort of drop off. And, it's a grind, it's a lot of,
It is. It totally is.
Yeah. So for you to stick it out, I think that says a lot, honestly, because it's tough. I mean, it's, trying to find the audience and getting your audience bigger. And it's so frustrating sometimes. You're like, it's not like, I feel like on Twitter or whatever, where there's the algorithms on social media, it's so much, you can sort of get something launched into the stratosphere or something, like if the algorithm likes it.
Sure. Absolutely.
You're like, I don't even know what I did.
Yeah.
But with podcasts, it's so hard to find that breakthrough group. You know what I mean?
Yes. That's the, and thank you for all of that, by the way. I'm very, very appreciative of those kind words, because it has been a grind, especially with this still 8 years in as just a hobby cast. But to get the respect from people like you, from the drivers, from the teams, from NASCAR itself, that's something that I'm not anywhere near ready to throw the towel in yet. So last year, normally I would do about 40 plus shows a year. I only did 26 last year with, having a 2-year-old and a job and all of that. It was hard to find the time, but, here we're like I said, we're not done yet by any stretch over here. And that's, like you said, the fall off on podcasts, because like you said, everybody, I can do that, and everybody can do one. It's
right.
Once people realize, what are you going to do with it, and figuring out, can you get a niche? Can you get it out there? Because that's the hard thing, and that was the hard thing 8 years ago was, everybody knows Jeff Gluck, everybody knows Bob Pockris, everybody knows Joe Rogan, everybody knows the big names. Who's Brandon in the Lap Traffic podcast? And it's getting that out there, and being on social media was really the only way to kind of grow that naturally. And that's where it's hard, because I totally get it too nowadays still. If I have a show with a great guest on and the numbers aren't there, I get bummed out. And it's like, if you don't put the work in and you're just sitting there, and you get 5 downloads an episode, it can get frustrating until you can build that audience, which is not easy to do in today's day and age with everybody having one.
Yeah, I try to tell people that, people come and ask for advice, and I try to tell people, in some ways it's the best time ever, and the worst time ever, because you control your own destiny. You don't have to wait for somebody to say, hey, I'd like to hire you to do something. You can do it. Yeah. But then the part of it of starting your own thing and just trying to hope the audience gets there. But in some ways though, that's the best part of, what you do. And I see it with your listenership too. It's the people that are your loyal listeners and are supportive and, will tweet positive things at you. Even if it's only 1 or 2 people, at times, you're just like, man, is anybody out there? And then you see a positive comment. Oh, I just, love your show, Brandon. It's so great to hear from you again, kind of thing.
Absolutely. It keeps it going.
Just sort of makes it all worth it. Yep,
absolutely.
Exactly.
You hit it right there, man. No doubt about that. Well, let's talk about your big podcast move. The Teardown podcast moving over to Dirty Mo Radio was announced yesterday. That is huge. Congratulations, man. Talk about, what kind of, how the pieces all came together for that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. It's one of those things where, it's sort of a simple story, I guess, but Mike Davis from Dirty Mo reached out and wanted to see if it would be possible for us to come over, because, he said, look, sort of the one thing we don't have is a post-race podcast. They've got, pretty much all the podcasts I listen to, I'm a fan of all their podcasts.
Absolutely.
And, I sort of, been making an annual appearance on Door Bumper Clear, and, it's the sort of the synergy between all the I listen to all their shows, right? And they are very generous in sort of referencing us at times, right? Dirty, Dale Jr. Download will say, oh, I heard this on their podcast, or Denny Hamlin will talk about it, or the DBC guys will talk about it. Oh, they said this on the Teardown. And, it's very validating to hear that, but it's also been, it's sort of scary in some ways, right? Because the reason people are talking about that is because we're the first ones out. And that's really our big selling point, I think, is like we're the, if we came out on every Thursday, I don't think that people would really listen to us, at least in the same degree they do, because then every podcast is out. But like the fact that we can get it right out after the race, it's great. But it's also, sometimes you're like, man, am I alone in this opinion? Like, I'll say, I didn't really love this race, or I didn't love that. And then all of a sudden, I'll listen to DBC the next day, or I'll listen to Denny's podcast, and they're saying some of the same things. And I go, oh, phew.
You
like,
get that
I guess
sense
I
of validation.
Yeah. But then sometimes you're like, oh no, they saw it completely differently. So I don't know what I was talking about. But we haven't had like the luxury yet of hearing the post-race shows on Sirius or TV or anybody else talked about. Like, it's literally just like, we just saw the race.
It's fresh.
Done our coverage and we're going. So it's just been a formula that's worked well enough for us. And I think it just slowly sort of built up a following. And I'm very grateful for that. It's still sort of like, wow, this is very weird. Like, why do people listen to this kind of thing? But, it's been great. So I just think that, like, obviously I'm still working for The Athletic, and that's my real job. Like, you're not, I don't think, unless you're, maybe Dale Jr. or Joe Rogan, I don't think you're getting rich off podcasts. You have to have pretty big listenerships to do that.
Yeah.
So, the bottom line is, like, The Athletic is my primary thing. And I thought this would actually be a really great way to talk about the work that we're doing there. Because, it's a subscription website, and ultimately we're trying to get people to give us a shot and subscribe and read what we have to say. And I thought, wow, if we're talking about that on a much larger platform, that only helps that. And so I think The Athletic felt the same way, like, well, sure, our couple of our writers here are going to be talking about their work, and
right. It's a win-win.
It's great. So yeah, I feel like it is. I really do. So it's just been sort of a natural thing, and got the pieces to all come together.
That's awesome. What will the recording be like? Where, if you're at the track one week and Jordan's at, will it all be like Zoom recording? Are you guys going to do some live streaming, or is that still all kind of in the works?
We're still talking about how we're going to do it, but I think that we'd like to try to do like a lot of YouTube live stuff after the race.
Sure.
I think that, because it's a post-race podcast, and there's sort of this urgency to, hear, sort of the immediate take. Obviously we'll have the podcast version that people can listen to anytime, but I think some people want to hear it right away. And actually, sort of the podcast that I based mine off of back in the day, there's this guy, Rob Cisternino, who does a Survivor podcast. And I was a patron of his on Patreon. That's actually how I got the idea for Patreon when I was on my own.
Sure.
And I had reached out to him, and I said, hey, can you just, he didn't know me, but I messaged him and I said, I'm a patron of yours, and I love your podcast. And I know you do, a live stream with it, and you have the podcast and all that stuff. But I was wondering how Patreon could work. And, I'm a sports journalist thinking of going on my own. And he said, let's get on a phone call. And again, he didn't know me at all. He spent like 40 minutes with me on the phone. And,
awesome.
Talking about how it worked. And he said, listen, do you have a podcast now? This was in, right before 2017, I guess, probably, or maybe really early 2017. I said, no, I don't have a podcast yet. I know that's something that people are getting into, but I don't have one. He's like, listen, you got to start a podcast. Like, that's the direction things are going. And, even if you're going to have your writing, I would really suggest having a podcast. So I took his advice, and
here we are.
Yeah. But I've noticed that, like, when he would do his, Survivor, and unfortunately I don't watch Survivor as much anymore because of the kids thing. Like you mentioned, I don't really get to watch any of my shows, but when I was watching it, he would start his live stream, shortly after the episode with his co-host. And I was like, well, I would like to see right now what they say, I'm curious. So I'd watch it on YouTube. So I think there's an audience for that.
Absolutely.
And people that don't want to watch it live. So we'll try to hit both parts.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. There's definitely something to be said about, respected people getting their take out and people wanting it fresh, right? Whether it was was there an on-track incident? Was there, drama, post-race on pit road, all of that. People, that's when they're chomping at the bit to get the takes, the coverage, and all of that. So I think you guys will have a great audience with doing something like that for sure. Jeff, I was scrolling through, all of the new the changes, the entire silly season, if you will, to get some talking points for us tonight. And as I was going through the various websites and things, and I can't tell you how many new different stories were so-and-so sponsors joining. We got a peanut company joining with Todd Gilliland. We got a plumbing company with Brad Keselowski. We got a healthcare organization. We've got a cellular. The amount of new sponsors coming into the sport in 2024, it hit me for the first time over the last couple of years to where maybe I just didn't pay attention or whatever, but it really kind of jumped out at me. Is that something that you noticed as well? What can be said about it in today's day and age in sports, in a sport like NASCAR? What's your thoughts?
I guess I kind of look at it in a couple ways here. So to me, certainly it's good that you're seeing these deals come in, right? But I wonder, it's just different now because I was thinking as some of these came across and I think, should I really retweet this or should I just let it go? And because it's almost, there's so much that I feel like if you post about one, you have to post about them all.
Sure.
And and as you mentioned, a lot of these are kind of smaller deals, right? It's oh, you use this company's joining and they will be on the car for 2 races or 3 races or whatever. And I think that's because, the days of when we used to hear sponsor announcements, I'm used to being like, okay, this is a big sponsor. This is their half season or full season. If you want to go back farther.
Sure.
Or, they're going to be doing 20 races. They're going to be doing 12 races. And so you'd say, oh, that's a story, and you think that's really important. And then, so now it's just one after another after another. But when you look at it, it's well, they're going to be on for 1 race and an associate and it just feels like this has sort of been created by the vacuum of the sponsors leaving or pulling back who wanted to do tons of races, right? You look at FedEx, for example, right? They were one of the last ones that was the full season for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And now even last year, you looked at, you're like, well, Denny Hamlin's driving this Mavis tire car or whatever, where did this come from? Where's FedEx? And they'd go, man, are they still doing stuff? And it's just, I think the more these full season, bigger sponsors have pulled back, the more there's an opening for these smaller, deals. And I think it's easier for teams to go to a company and say, hey, would you be interested in activating for, X amount of races, a race here? It's not going to cost you, $25 million. We could, give you, hey, $1.5 million, couple $1 million, you get pretty big bang for your buck. So, it's both good and bad in a way because you better have a sales department that can fill out your roster
right
with a bunch of different people if you're not going to have a full season. But, I think those days are just so long gone. It'd be easier to sit here and say, man, it sure would help if you had full season sponsor for all these teams because, the consistency, the brand identity, you look on the track and half the time now you're like, what car is that? I'm not sure who's in that color this week or something.
Well, and I bet the drivers wish it was that way too, because that'd be, I bet, a lot less driver appearances they'd have to do. Because
you're right about that.
With each new spot, and that's got to be, the grind on the team. I'm just going to say Jeff Gordon DuPont days, like, they probably didn't need a real big sales team for that, but now you look at one of the first organizations that really jumps out to me as having like these, multiple 2 or 3 race deals, with a bunch of different companies is like JTG. I feel like they were one of the first to kind of have, it was almost a new sponsor every other week, and the commitment and the demand on the driver to help sell those to, I can only imagine how much their phone was ringing off the hook to whether it was go show up, at a headquarters somewhere or, showing up in a suite before, driver intros, all of that, just more demand on the driver.
Yeah. And I assume some of the bigger drivers can go, hey, wait, I'm a veteran. I don't want to do this many a year. I'll commit to giving you this much days and you can sell it to the sponsors. But I'm sure the younger drivers are like, listen, we just want to be sponsored. We just want to be on the track. We'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah. Yep.
So, if you're, Carson Hocevar or whatever, and they're saying, all right, we signed this new sponsor for one race, but you're going to have to, go to their convention and you're going to have to do this. And he's gonna be like, okay, yeah, absolutely. I mean, but you add those up.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's, like you said, it's quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, there, a lot of different opinions, if you will, with NASCAR's electric car announcement and test. Break it down for the listeners. What is really going on with this? What's the motivation behind it, and what we can expect down the road?
I think this is overblown. I think that this is one of those things that gets people really triggered because they think, oh, NASCAR is going to be, they're developing an electric car. They're going to be Formula E. They're not going to be loud anymore. They're not going to be. And that's just, I just don't think that's just not coming. I just don't think so. Now, could there be an alternative fuel type of car? I definitely think they're going that direction. A lot of this is always driven by manufacturers, right? Because if manufacturers are interested in electric cars and they say, hey, we are going to throw, $200 million, into a series so we can promote our electric vehicles or whatever it is, who knows? Then all of a sudden you go, oh, yes, we do have an electric series. But I think from what NASCAR was saying in our preseason briefing that we had recently, they are very, very aware of like the fact that, the sound is a very important part of NASCAR, the big sound. And that hit home to them again when they went to the Le Mans last year and the Garage 56, because half the comments they got were, wow, that car just sounds so like throaty, American, loud car,
Sure.
And so the executives kept getting that feedback and they realized, that really is a big part of our identity. And you're not going to be able to sell a bunch of golf cart sounding vehicles going around like in Formula E and NASCAR. You're just not.
Yep.
So, but what they did do is the executives went to Japan in the off season and they watched these hydrogen powered cars. And they said, the hydrogen powered cars actually, the engines sound still loud. They are roaring engines still. And so they said, well, if we could have like a hydrogen powered thing, that could be maybe something that is the direction we're going. And they could easily, from what I understand, this model that they've built, this prototype of an electric car that they're going to run as an exhibition at the Clash, it doesn't have to be electric, right? Like it could be, they could turn it into a hydrogen car, but they're just trying to sort things out, see what they can do. It's very early. They're not going to suddenly say, oh, we're having an electric series or a hybrid series or whatever it is. But I do think, they look at it and they're like, well, we could have an SUV series, because everybody's wanting to invest in SUVs now. And, I just don't think, if you're worried about electric
Sundays anytime
yeah.
soon.
No, it would be, it's, I wouldn't even say this is anytime soon.
Fair
So
enough.
I wouldn't worry about it.
Good
Yeah.
deal. Good deal. There you have it, Lab Traffic Nation. We can all rest easy tonight heading into the Clash in a couple days. New qualifying procedures. I kind of like these, to be honest with you. I think it's a pretty decent change. Nothing, they didn't swing at the fences or anything for it, but it makes sense to me in terms of how they're going to line up the outside row and the inside row, versus the old way, which kind of got a little confusing. Do you agree? Do you what's kind of feedback have you heard on that?
This to me seemed like a really practical change, because anytime you're going to split into two groups and have a knockout thing, one group is going to be potentially disadvantaged. And, you'd see it last year, right? Oh, everybody in Group A, they're all going to be way higher up in the starting lineup because they went out at a better time, so they had faster time. At least the cars that were 11 through, the back of the field, not the ones that made the top 10. So, this to just say, okay, well, we're going to have one start on the inside, one start on the outside. I mean, it might not sound like a huge thing, but that could be the difference of like 4, 5, 6 spots to start the race, which
absolutely,
as tough as track position is, that could be huge. So I think it's a really practical move, and it's just one of those things that makes sense to me, and I can't find any objections about it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it, like I said, it made all the sense in the world. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of almost like, the duels, in terms of either what duel you're in, and then your starting spot from the duel. They kind of picked from that a little bit in terms of, finalizing this process here a little bit. Let's see here, Jeff. All right. There was some definite uproar with regards to the Clash coming up this weekend, in terms of initially not letting fans in for the heat races. Now they are. What was going on there, man? I'm not 100% sure about this, but from what I gather, it was a situation of like, all right, look, the last 2 Saturday crowds at the Clash have been pretty minuscule. The first year, I don't know if you remember this, but they did not open the gates in time for the first practice. And people were outside the gates, and then I think they got in for the second practice, but a lot of people were upset. But even then, the crowd wasn't very big. And last year they had them for the full day, but I look back at like my videos and pictures, and it just, there was, I don't know, thin,
maybe a couple thousand people at best.
Yep.
So, I had heard too that the ticket sales for the Clash have not been good.
Okay.
I think the shine has maybe worn off the event a little bit. And so I'm assuming they looked at it and they're like, you know what, Saturday, let's just not open the gates. We're gonna have to pay all this money to the security, and it's just not worth the squeeze,
Sure.
But then I think it's possible, and again, I don't know this 100% sure, but I don't know that they had decided on the format yet, because with the NASCAR Mexico Series there this year, then they said, well, what are we gonna do with the heat races? So they end up saying, okay, well, let's move the heat races to Saturday for the first time. And then all of a sudden the fans are like, well, wait a minute. Because it wasn't just you're missing a practice and qualifying. You're missing heat races, like real actual stuff that people really enjoy. And some people thought that was the best part of the whole event. So it's like, what in the world? And I think it caught NASCAR off guard. They're like, wait, people are really mad about it? Oh, okay. And so, the solution was, well, it's, we're not going to sell tickets at this point, I think. So let's just open the gates and have some free day on Saturday, which I think is really cool. Probably going to cost them a lot of money, because now they had to go hire all the security people, and they're not making any money off the ticket revenue.
Right.
But so it's sort of bit them pretty hard. If they just sold tickets for it in the first place, it wouldn't have been nearly the issue. But at least it got sorted out. It was certainly one of those things where you go, are they really going to not do this? They're going to have heat races with 0 fans even allowed. I'm glad they, quickly fixed that.
I'm with you. No doubt. We got a new TV deal that, we're going to see NASCAR, across a couple different platforms, networks. I get it. I'm behind it. as long as we can get access to it, I'll use the phrase the old guard fan base is, probably a little upset, but it's just where we're headed in today's day and age from a viewing perspective. Hell, you look at granted NASCAR isn't the NFL, but even the NFL ran on a streaming network for a playoff game. That's just what it is. And, Amazon is pretty big. I think most people have, an Amazon Prime account and will be able to have access to it. I don't think it'll hurt too many people, but, I've been a big proponent of NASCAR just doing their own network. I will pay $10 a month. Let me see any practice I want to see, original programming, the races, and let's get everything in one spot. But, so it doesn't bother me as much, but, what's been your perspective on, the new network deals?
It's interesting because, it's so tough to tell where the media landscape's going. The last TV deal, it was all about, well, now the big thing is these, sports networks. Oh, FS1 and NBCSN, those two basically overpaid so that they could get programming for their sports networks and increase the cable fees and all that stuff. And now, NBCSN doesn't even exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And, it's all about cord cutting and all this stuff. And, the streamers are so competitive for content, they're willing to pay. And you brought up with the NFL. I mean, that playoff game that was on Peacock only found a huge audience, massive audience. So, people are getting used to it already. And by the time NASCAR is even, a couple years into its deal, it's going to be quite the norm, I think. Of course people say, I don't want to pay for this, but it's the money that they're getting from all these partners putting so much into the sport. That is, you look at like the NBCSN money or whatever, right? Like the billions, 8.2 billion or whatever they got from last TV deal. NASCAR, after they signed that deal, has gone through a pretty steep downturn in TV ratings and attendance. Absolutely. Compared to what it was. Yeah. And yet that money was built in to increase every year, and that has kept the sport afloat in many ways, and knowing that that's guaranteed money and it doesn't matter even if the ratings are down, blah, 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 hey, they still got to pay. Yeah. So that is long-term financial security for everybody. And it sounds like the teams are going to get more money. We don't know what the charter negotiations are going to turn out just yet, but they're going to get more in some way. So, how can you look at that and say, this is terrible because, it's helping the sport survive and giving insurance in a way in case something, drastic happens. That money's still going to be there. So that's huge.
Sure. No, I feel you there. Jeff, one more miscellaneous one for you, and then we can wrap with a couple headline type stories looking into the 2024 season. It was announced, I don't know, maybe about a month or so ago now, I feel like, that the SRX series is not going to be running this year, which I was completely shocked by that just because of the popularity that SRX had. It had a strong backing with Tony Stewart. I went to the SRX race at Berlin, and the crowd, the stands were packed, and then some. It seemed like it had the popularity and the backing, and people showing up at the track. Were you surprised? Can you shed a little light onto what happened and where we're at with that?
Yeah, I think it's a few factors. I mean, for one thing, you definitely have Tony Stewart, who by all signs seems to be wanting to take stuff off his plate. He got rid of he sold his sprint car series to Kyle Larson and Brad Sweet, which turned into the bulk of the high limit stuff, even though high limit had already been, established as like a 6-race series. Now they are pretty much a competitor to the World of Outlaws. He's trying to start a family. He's going to run full-time NHRA. It just seems like there's a lot of stuff where it makes sense for him to get this off his plate. But the other part of it too is like, you look at their move to ESPN their ratings tumbled. I mean, big time tumbled.
Yeah.
And I think that they, if you're having to buy time on ESPN or whatever the arrangement was, and you're not getting the ratings, you're not getting, the ad revenue or however their business model worked, it's a tough sell. I agree. I went to 3 SRX races and the crowds were very enthusiastic at all of them. And it was a lot of fun. And I think people were really into it. And, I thought the broadcasts were great.
Yeah.
I do think though that the first year had a much better mix sort of drivers from different disciplines, because you had some NASCAR guys, the older NASCAR guys, and then you had some IndyCar guys, and you had the local heroes, which was really cool storyline. And, it just felt like by the end, like this last year, it was very, very NASCAR heavy, even with current guys. I mean, you had Keselowski running full time.
Kyle
And it
Busch
just was
did a few. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And Hamlin and you had so many people. It was just well, I mean, it's almost turning into NASCAR light now. And I just don't know if you can, I don't know if there's enough there to sell that, I don't know. I think that it was probably very, very, very expensive to operate and keep it going. And it just, even if they get great ratings great attendance, I don't know that justifies the ratings being down. So, it's an expensive thing to have to prepare all these cars in 6 weeks and take them from place to place and crew members. And I just think that it probably, the ends didn't meet.
Sure. Fair enough. Good deal. All right, let's look ahead. A new NASCAR season is upon us. We got the Clash this weekend. Some pretty significant driver changes. Massive change. SHR with Josh Berry, Noah Gragson, John Hunter Nemechek moving up to the 43. We got AJ Allmendinger moving back full-time to the Xfinity Series. Haley Deegan, her first full rookie season in Xfinity. Sheldon Creed making some moves. What are some early headlines that you think we might see from some of these notable driver changes?
Oh, that's a good question. I really don't know. I think so much of it, I guess where I've gotten things wrong in the past on trying to think what drivers are going to do is I don't take into account enough how important the driver crew chief relationships are and the chemistry is and building the team. I think that's probably one of the most underrated things in NASCAR, if not the most.
Sure.
These drivers, you have to be able to get team chemistry as quickly as possible when you're on a new team. And, it's more than just, hey, I took my guys out to lunch or whatever. It's understanding, because Kyle Busch, for instance, right? He's so good at saying exactly what his car is doing in the corner, but one crew chief might feel differently than another crew chief, or they might interpret that differently. Well, okay, so he's saying this. So I wonder just how extreme he's talking, so let me try this change. But, another crew chief says, well, he's probably overestimating it, so I'll do this. It's just little things like that. And it just adds up because the sport is so close on every level now.
Right. Yeah.
I just think those are the little things that can make the difference, in speed. So it's really tough to say, well, I think these guys will click, or these guys should be up to go. Or this person's getting great equipment because this driver ran well in it. But we've seen over and over again, it just doesn't guarantee that the next driver will, or maybe some other, you're like, well, they're getting in this car. It wasn't really a good fit. They didn't really run well last year with this guy and he's pretty good. And then all of a sudden they take off and whoa, look at this guy. They're nailing it. He must be, but it's a lot of times just because the communication's better.
Yeah.
So not to give you a complete non-answer, but
no. That makes complete sense. Because you look at, for example, Kevin and Rodney, they had that. And I think that's what allowed them to have the success that they had from, 2014, we'll call it, through the end of the COVID season of 2020 when he won 9 races and then, kind of, fell off there the last, year or two. They had a great connection and chemistry and relationship and knew what, we're probably in each other's head, so I totally get where you're coming from with that and to where that can make or break, so when you look at somebody like, Haley Deegan, first year, and I think that's important too, is what you said, I feel helps, reel people in a little bit to allow them to set appropriate expectations in terms of what we can expect and it also shows the importance of whether it's a team change, driver change, crew chief change, pit crew change, how all of that needs to work so perfectly to be able to come together for a top 10, let alone a win in any of these 3 series.
Yeah, it's amazing because it's like you even look. I'll give an example of like Blake Harris, Alex Bowman, right? Like Blake Harris with McDowell, it looked like, man, this is unbelievable. Wow, like they've really elevated McDowell here, and so then it's like, okay, well Blake Harris is now hired by Hendrick, and now he's going to do the same thing with Bowman. And Greg Ives is leaving, but don't worry because this guy that just elevated McDowell is coming over and he's going to turn Bowman into, this world beater kind of thing. I wonder what he can do. And it's not that he didn't do it or Bowman didn't do it, but it just doesn't seem like they've gotten it right yet. And
Sure.
And Bowman was leading the points before his injury last year. So that's maybe a bit unfair, but it just goes to show you like it's amazing to me, even all these years into NASCAR and how, and this is such a data-driven sport. I mean, you can look at every lap and how people are performing and passing and all the analytics, and it's still so hard to forecast in some ways. Like, could you have said last year that, okay, Chase Elliott, after leading the series in wins, is going to miss the playoffs completely and not win a race? Like, yeah, he missed some races with a broken leg, but he was there for most of the year and they didn't run well at all, really.
Right.
I mean, by his standards. So how do you know that's going to happen? So it's, it's a Truex, like, okay, he misses the playoffs one year and then he wins the regular season championship the next year. And then you say, oh, wow, okay, well, he's a lock for the Final Four. And then he has such a bad playoffs that he finishes 11th in points. It's like, what just happened? How can you forecast this,
I mean, if we could, we'd all be cashing our betting tickets. That's for sure.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, Jeff, I can't thank you enough for the time. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Great way to kick things off for the 2024 year here. Congrats again on the big announcement from yesterday on the teardown moving over to the Dirty Mo Radio Network. That's awesome. Anything coming up you want to plug? Anything coming out over the next week or so?
Oh, let's see. Well, I have my review. I just posted that of the new Netflix series, and I was able to watch all 5 episodes this last week before the debut day and get my review ready. And I got to say, it's phenomenal.
It's good.
I think
Awesome.
it's some of the best NASCAR content ever.
Excellent.
Honestly,
That's cool.
If you want to check out that's on there. We'll be heading to the Clash this weekend, and we have tons of Daytona type stories coming up. So getting ready to ramp things up here pretty quick.
Good deal, man. Well, thanks again, and look forward to talking with you very soon.
Yeah. And again, like, congratulations on all your success. And I hope your listeners realize how important they are, because, this is, again, we talk about what keeps us going, and it's just the little positive comments. I don't think everybody realizes how much of a difference those make when you're churning out content, whether it's writing or podcasting or video or whatever. Like, it's, we're all human. So, the little things, and the internet is not so nice these days. So any positive comments
I know, right?
are very welcome. So congrats to you, and keep it going.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon, brother.
Sounds good.
Later. Lap Traffic Nation, are you not entertained? Man, I tell you, Jeff Gluck is just one of those awesome guys that it's just great to be able to have a conversation like that where it just flows so smoothly. 40 minutes just flew by, which is awesome. And I couldn't be more thankful for the time that he gave, especially on a big day for him where, he's got, media things to do himself as far as the announcement and move over to Dirty Mo and all of that good stuff. Wish him nothing but the best. And like I said, just so appreciative of his knowledge and his time to come on the show and kick off season 8 of the Lap Traffic podcast. All right. Let's do some quick social media stuff. Everybody, make sure you check out the website, thelaptrafficpodcast.com, Facebook, The Lap Traffic Podcast, YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, Instagram, Twitter.
You've got mail.
All at Lap Traffic PC. And if you're really generous and are feeling like doing some extra follows, give a follow to @3Crowd Catering and @Dining DET Pod. Those are the 2 new handles for the catering company and the Dining in Detroit podcast that are going to be kicking off here very soon, as well as, hey, I might as well sponsor myself. So over the next week, who knows? We may have the official show sponsor of the Lap Traffic podcast. So, hey, I built the platform, might as well use it in some capacity, right? If you've made it this far into the show, please leave a review, tell your friends, all of that good stuff. I got a new batch of stickers and koozies in, and they are ready to get sent out to you guys. So if you want a free sticker, free koozie, all you got to do, shoot me a DM, go to the website, thelaptrafficpodcast.com, fill out the contact page, and I will gladly send them out to you for free. All right. There's that. We'll do some new follower shout-outs as the season goes along down the road. But without further ado, all right. Now some football talk. Got to do it. And then we'll close things out with some Lap Traffic Fantasy. All right, Lap Traffic Nation, joining me back on the line. You can follow him on Twitter, @RaceWeather. And there's actually reason for a weather segment because we got the Clash this weekend, which I'm very excited about. We've got a lot of football to talk about as well. Mr. Aaron Studwell, sir, how are you? Good evening. And let's cue up the band, shall we?
Oh my gosh, that's right. We haven't talked this year. Please fire it up.
Oh, it is going. Here, let's give it a second here. Hail to the victors, valiant. Yes, we are celebrating a long-awaited national championship, man. What was going through your mind? I know what was going through mine. Just absolutely an incredible span of a few weeks there to bring in the new year. Just incredible, a national championship.
I've been part of the program for decades and didn't have a chance to go to the 97 game, didn't have a chance to go to this game, but I honestly wonder if my neighbors heard me yelling on the Sanders Still interception when it really, I think it was hard for me to almost accept it that something's going to happen. It's just like you don't want to get excited about it.
Yes. No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And then that is just, I am so happy for Team 144. I am so proud of their effort. It's been an amazing season. It's going to be hard to repeat, but yes. Damn it, they did it.
They did it. They did do it.
And it's amazing.
I will tell you, I forget who asked me this the other day, but to me, beating Bama was equally as important as the Washington game, just because even though it's not the Bama of 5 years ago or whatever it is, Bama still carries a stature about themselves. And to be able to say that you beat Bama is something that not a lot of schools get to say, or not a lot of teams get to say that they did. And that was just an incredible moment to see that. And I wasn't able to scream, obviously, because of Alden. But man, if we went through our typical superstitious routines well into the playoffs, and it worked for a long run there, which was awesome. That national championship game was kind of like you said, by all accounts, they were supposed to win the game, right? By the numbers, they were supposed to win. They did win. But, would they get flustered, or, would they have some of the crazy things happen like had happened to the Lions here? And we can get to that in a minute. But as you mentioned, it's going to be hard to repeat, losing some players and losing our coach. And we've been talking about this for quite some time as well in terms of, of Harbaugh. And here it is, we can finally wrap it up with a nice little bow, I suppose. Obviously Harbaugh leaving for the Chargers, and I want your take, but I want to pose the question in kind of two different ways to see if you feel, for you personally, the answer's different. And that is, well, maybe even three ways. If he didn't win the national championship, would he be back? If he won the national championship and didn't have the potential penalties that may or may not come against him, would that impact his decision to come back? So let's start there.
Okay, first of all, I'm really happy for him. I think mission accomplished.
Yes.
So which I think ties into the next point of saying, if they hadn't have won, the mission would not have been accomplished. I honestly think he would have stayed. I think they would have figured out a way to do it that they would have said, okay, we cannot fire you for – the biggest thing was that if something new comes up,
yep,
that we can fire you for cause. And he's like, no, you're not going to do that.
Yeah. That
was the biggest sticking point. I think if they hadn't won the national championship, I think they would have found a way past it.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I can get behind that. Do you think that, when friend of the show, Dan Wetzel, yes, I'll name drop, came out with that story about, where the contract negotiations were at, did any of it at any point seem as an admission of guilt based on what he was trying to have included in a potential new contract?
No, I don't think it was an admission. I don't think it was an admission of guilt. I think I think they appropriately shielded him from it.
Sure.
I honestly think he may not have known. I think, but yeah, according to, well, and you go back to Chris Partridge and him being the fall guy and Connor Stallion.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I don't think it was an admission of guilt either. I was I was curious. I think one thing that makes it so incredibly difficult, and we can even make a full circle with a NASCAR tie-in with this to anybody that has stuck around and is listening to us babble about Michigan football still, is that the how do I want to say this? The inconsistency from penalties and rule interpretations and things of that nature. We see it in NASCAR week in and week out sometimes, So not knowing, how the NCAA may have potentially responded, and I think that maybe played the biggest factor is, not knowing or having precedent to go off of to know what the potential repercussions may or may not have been.
I think that's part of it. But if you think you were in the right, and you know what, this whole thing, well, everybody else is doing it, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
Not to me.
I'm with you on that one. Yes.
But yeah, I think that, there's always the uncertainty factor. Anytime you deal with the NCAA, to say that, we don't know what the punishment's going to be, and it could be an antiquated law. We talked about that. The rule doesn't make sense because I don't understand if he even did go to the games. Why, other than a chance to travel?
Sure,
because he could have been just as effective at home.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's that. That's the thing too with technology, the way it is today. Like there could have been, a lot more creative ways than to just actually go and be in the stands. You can get a lot better bird's eye view in some instances with, some of the TV cams that you can subscribe to and have the bird's eye view, just like with NASCAR. There's, in the past, there's been subscription type services to where if you want to watch the in-car of Kyle Busch the entire race, you can sit there and watch the in-car Kyle Busch the entire race, and
they can do the teams can do that. They have S&T data now, so it's
yep.
But I want to go back a little bit in the conversation. You were saying how the Alabama win was just crucial because of the cachet that Alabama has.
Yeah,
I think that was really proven by DeBoer leaving Washington to go to Alabama.
Right, no kidding, and Saban retiring. Like the coaches that have either left, shifted, what have you, has been this. It's unprecedented what we've seen from a coaching perspective, both across the NCAA and the NFL.
The top four teams, three of the top four teams will have new coaches next year.
Yeah, yep. And I tell you, I could not be happier. Sharon Moore deserves this opportunity.
Yeah, agreed.
I'd have been really heartbroken if they went and hired externally with what he did for the team to even have the potential to be talking about the national championship that we won. Obviously, the players did it, but man, they needed him, and he stepped up and delivered in some clutch moments.
I agree 100%. I couldn't imagine who else would get the job, and I understand there's a process they had to go through. But they got their man. And it's going to be interesting. The Chargers and the Ravens do play each other next season too.
That's going to be crazy. I hope. I guess the one thing and I will definitely admit there were years you and I were talking and it was like Harbaugh needs to, or I want him gone. I was adamant, and now I'm sad that he's not here. He finally got things turned around, and 3 straight Big Ten titles, a break in the losing streak in the bowl games with a Rose Bowl win. I mean, there was just so many boxes checked off. Like, man, we could have had a good dynasty run here going. I feel like I get why he's going back. Could you just imagine if Harbaugh, gets the Super Bowl ring, and then his brothers just got the one ring, and he's got.
He would be one of the most accomplished football coaches of all time.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's not a statement. 5 years ago, I'm not sure that's a statement I would have ever made.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, you'd have to put Pete Carroll up there, I would think.
Yeah.
And did you see the news about him? I don't know the validity behind it, but supposedly he went to try to get the main job back, and they said no.
Way. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, so it was something about after the season. He went. He had said he wanted to stay with the organization in some type of an office spot, but then went back and asked if he could have the head coaching job back. I don't remember who I saw that from, like I said, to say whether or not there's credible backing behind that, but I did see something about that, so that was interesting. Let's see here. Do we need to hash the debauchery of the Lions championship game? Oh, my God.
The debauchery or the botching?
I don't. Both.
The thing is, Campbell, he was true to himself.
Yes.
He was going to coach the game like he did all season. There are times you look back and I shouldn't even say look back. When it was happening, like, are you doing that? Yeah. Now, the running on 3rd and goal, that I don't think you can ever convince me that was the right call.
Sure.
Getting away from the running game, at the beginning of the third quarter after they drove, and then was it Gibbs that fumbled?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a rough one. Yep.
And then then all of a sudden it's tied again. But then treat it like it's 0-0. When you came out, it was 0-0. You ran it down their throats.
Yep.
Effectively.
Yes.
Why did you go away from that?
I don't.
And I'm not as.
Yeah. No, I'm hearing you. I was very frustrated. And this has happened multiple times this year where it's 4th and 2, 4th and 3, and they have nobody in the backfield. And I don't know what it is, but if they run it on 4th down, man, I think their percentage of getting it is such drastically higher, proven throughout the year when they would run on 4th and short versus throwing on 4th and short. And there were 2 4th and shorts that they didn't even try to make it look like they were going to run the ball, which again goes back to your point of why aren't you running the ball? And then it was just a couple of missed flops that if they would have, the 2 flea flickers, I love that play design. I love that call. I think it fits really well into Goff's, in the pocket type play and creates that extra time. If either one of those connected, it's a different game. The left points for not kicking, we saw Moody. We're very familiar, you and I, with Jake Moody, how he missed a 45er, so the 2 field goals that they could have potentially gone for, I think one would have been a 48. One was, I think, a 50, 52, something like that, so they weren't chip shot gimmies, so I don't, like you said, you wouldn't have wanted him to change his coaching style because it's his coaching style that, got them to where they are. It was just, man, that third quarter, man, that was the nail biter right there. So, and the thing was for me, as the fan was, hey, we're here. I was, before the game started, I was just happy to be here. But then when you have a 17-point lead and you're like, wait a minute, we could actually, all we got to do is stay course and we're going to the Super Bowl. That's what made it worse for me. If we would have played from behind the whole game, if we would have, played like we played in the third quarter the whole game, okay, fine. I could have swallowed the pill a little better than, blowing a 17-point lead and,
to a team that really doesn't have a good record of holding a lead.
No. I mean, after watching that Green Bay game, they're obviously they're a beatable team, so it's, I would suspect Kansas City should pretty much, I'm not going to say have their way with them, but, if Kansas City goes up 17 points, San Francisco ain't coming back from that. I agree with that. San Francisco is going to need to play, like anything else, you're going to need to play a full 60 minutes of football because Kansas City only put 17 up and they barely kind of squeaked by. Yep.
They forced a lot of turnovers, but Baltimore in some ways gave them the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
What stunned me, and I really hope all the hate on Brock Purdy ends soon.
Oh, yeah. He has taken a San Francisco team that, struggled with, Jimmy G, and he's really turned, he's helped, cultivate that team with, a great running back now, a couple great receivers, and their defense is pretty they're only going to get better and more of a tough competition and challenge to beat. If this is a repeat next year, for the conference championship, it's going to be even of a tougher challenge. So,
right. Well, Lions got cap space though, so they do have the ability to kind of fill in where they think they may have needs because. They do.
And the one thing I would say, and I was guilty of this as well, is I was not happy with the lack of movement that the Lions did at the trading deadline and all of that. And
right.
I was like, now again, another Michigan guy, they picked up Donovan Peoples-Jones, which, he's had a couple clutch plays over the last few games of the regular season and, a couple key spots in the playoffs. But looking back now, I mean, obviously Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes knew what they were doing to not go and make a move, because either way, we're probably in the same position and we didn't lose anything. We didn't lose any draft picks or anything like that. Right. So we're even more and better poised for the draft, which is in Metro Detroit, which is it's downtown Detroit.
Which yes, it is. Yes, it is. We'll be hoping to be there. We'll be hoping to pull it all together and have a couple of clients be drafted.
Yeah, that would be badass, man.
Freaking amazing. Yes. Yes, it would be. No
other way to put it. Yeah, it'd be really badass. Well, let's do a little transition here. We got some racing coming up. The 2024 season is about to, it's preliminarily going to kick off here with the Clash non-points race here this weekend. And I'm ready for another season, ready to do some podcasting. And what are you excited about this year?
Daytona.
Right?
Maybe I'm just cynical. I will probably have it on, but the feedback I am getting from my followers about the Clash, and I saw there was a format change, and I didn't really pay much attention to the format change. The fact they were going to have their heats on a Saturday, but not let anybody in. Like, it really is this how we promote the sport? And I guess they gave way, and I know one other podcast where I know both speakers is taking a little credit for that, but I think that's funny. But I'm not taking it away from them. It's just that sometimes it takes the media to show the sport what the great thing to do is.
Absolutely. I don't know.
How do you have a day of racing in a high profile location and say, oh, public's not welcome? What?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Jeff Gluck and I were talking about that earlier, and now they're letting people in as a free day. So, if they would have just done it the right way in the first place, they could have put a little extra money in their pockets. And now,
I know. It's like, I don't get it. I know a lot of people aren't. It's like I'd rather watch lawnmowers race on that kind of track than stock cars.
Yeah, I mean, and Jeff mentioned this too, in terms of the ticket sales being down and all of that. You've got, and this is my opinion on something that I've gone on at length about ad nauseum over the last, 7 years on this show, in terms of points race or, non-points races, and you've got to keep things fresh to keep people engaged and wanting to come watch something that doesn't impact your championship. And, the first year, great, cool, this incredible venue and all that, great. I can get behind that. It's new, it's different. I'll watch it. Okay, cool. First time they ran, the Bristol Dirt. Okay, it's new, it's something different. Okay, cool. You've got to get unique and creative, I feel, with non-points races. And, I don't see how they can go back there again next year. I don't know if that's been announced or not, if they are or not, but I don't.
If it would be announced last year during the race weekend that they announced there will be a 24 date.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, what do you do that's new, right? Like, and that's where, at some point you gotta, I get that they won't, but at some point it's like, if you don't want the negative reaction, then you got to throw the towel in on the things that aren't working, so, but you got to have, do you have to have something before, the kickoff to the season? Do you go back and do something at Daytona? I guess, I don't know. I don't know what would work, and I hate to sound so negative with something like that, but it's just hard to get, I think people to buy into something that doesn't contribute to your championship.
I think part of it was last year, and I don't think the demographics they were targeting with the entertainment are the demographics of the typical viewer, and that they're trying to bring new people to the event and to watching.
Sure.
And I don't think I'm not sure those people are going to necessarily have carried over. I'm sure some would and did, but I don't think I think they're totally missing the mark on how they're projecting the sport. And I understand it's got to move forward. I understand it's just a bunch of we're two
Right.
that are talking about this. But I just think a lot of what they did missed the mark. But the other thing I was just thinking of is like they are really not having Auto Club anymore, and really not sure when Auto Club's going to be rebuilt, if ever.
Yeah, I mean they've demolished it. It's
know, there's no point. There's we got half the job done.
Yep.
We got the easy half the job done.
Yeah,
it's torn down. Do you go back? You know, we love road racing now, but is that something else that's getting tired too? Do you do something at Riverside? Do you get Riverside back in the action? Yeah, the other thing I look at with the LA Coliseum, I'm not even sure it's a great venue. It's a historic venue.
Yeah. No,
and same with Bristol. It's like it was such a waste of materials and time and effort to put down a paved track or to put down a dirt track, or conversely put down a dirt track.
Right. You
want something interesting? Let's go up to northern Canada. We can go snow racing with stock cars.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's
they do that in Europe. So you want something different, and you want people to show up, just watch on TV. Let's go up to Yukon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. You know, you gotta really bring something that hasn't been seen by the casual viewer, either in the area, to get them to show up for something like that and to tune in and watch. I feel, you know, I'll tune in, obviously, you know, from podcast perspective.
Right.
But I understand why people don't, and that's, you know, when you want the verbiage to be the other way. I don't understand why you're not tuning into this. I understand why you're not tuning into this. So,
it's a good way to put it.
Anyways, well, how's the weather looking for racing action this weekend?
Not great. Not great.
Oh,
not
really?
Great. Yes. No. It always rains in Southern California. It never rains in Southern California. It pours, man. It pours.
Right.
Friday, chance of showers in the afternoon. Saturday actually looks drier, but Sunday, I was just looking at the models before we got on. It does not look good.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it could be a lot of waiting around. It could be a Monday night race.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I know. I'm really not sure how they're going to handle it.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, no, El Nino in Southern California, it's not typically a good combination.
Fair enough. Oh, well, we will anxiously
Boy, I took the wind right out of your sails. Took the wind right out of your sails with that, didn't I?
Pretty much. Not what I was expecting. That's for sure. Not like what I can pretty much bank on with Phoenix and Vegas when that rolls around.
Exactly.
So,
well, remember we had the last race at Auto Club snowed.
That's true.
We've had dust storms in Vegas. We've had rain in Phoenix. It everything you think is just upside down, and
absolutely
they don't. Yeah.
Yes.
People don't think sometimes, and I'm not meaning us.
Right. I love it. Well, sir, thank you for coming on to talk some football and to kick off season 8 of the show here.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. Congratulations on season 8.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for the invite back, and sorry for interrupting.
Oh, no, you're good. Of course. I'm sure we'll have you and Brian on a couple times throughout the season, of course. And with that, we will catch you on the flip side here in a little bit.
Thank you, sir. Hail to the victors and go blue.
Absolutely. Go blue. All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Later.
See ya. All right. There is the Dr. Aaron Studwell. And now, if you really are still with us, let's wrap this thing up with a little lap traffic fantasy and what you can expect in the season 8 version of Lap Traffic Fantasy. All right, Lap Traffic Nation, let's close this thing out with a little Lap Traffic Fantasy. And joining me on the line right now is your defending Lap Traffic Fantasy champion. He had a dominating year last year. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Andrew Yu. What's up, man? How are you?
Yeah, glad to be back. Hope you're doing pretty well.
Yeah, no, things are good. We are, it's back to podcasting nights, which is awesome. Excited to be back for season 8 of the show and the Fantasy League. It was your first year in the league last year, and you won in dominating fashion. What about the league did you find that niche with, and were able to just kind of hit the ground running?
Yeah, I think if I would say, the past year I got into fantasy, not this league, but just in general NASCAR fantasy. And before then, I was just a big NASCAR fan. So, yeah, I think just getting the groove in 1 year before and just understanding some of the statistics involved in NASCAR and, how NASCAR kind of works a little bit more along those lines. And, yeah, even some kind of even strategy, whether it's pit strategy or even strategies of some fantasy games. I think that was really what helped me last year. And hopefully, for upcoming people, they can also get into that kind of ways of learning. And if not, they have, potentially new ways to how to play this game or how to strategize on in order to get the win in the finale. Then, yeah, I'm all for it.
Excellent. I love it. I'm excited for your defense because, going into 8 years, we have not had one repeat winner. So there is definitely the first and even more bragging rights if you are able to defend the crown successfully this year, which is going to be fun to watch. That's for sure. Couple of the rule changes going into 2024. Nothing too crazy. Not reinventing the wheel because I think the format works pretty well. I think we had success with expanding the playoff field for the first round because we definitely saw a few guys that would not have made the initial cut make the playoffs and make it to the second round of the playoffs. So I think that was a nice little perk that keeps people engaged a little bit more, expanding the initial playoff field. But a couple of the rule changes going into 2024 is that with the Xfinity and Truck Series, if it is a playoff limited driver selection like we've had for years now, Xfinity and Cup are now going to be limited to one pick per segment to match up with the Cup Series. What do you think about that rule change, sir?
Yeah, so if I'm hearing you right, so each some of the playoff guys from last year, they are going to have only one pick this time instead of two picks last year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I think that'll help. Not so much. I think it'll just help strategy wise, and especially with the Truck Series, to where we only have 23 total truck races. You knock it down 7 for the from the playoff side of things. 22 races, and you don't need 2 driver truck picks for that. It'll even things out a little bit, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think the 2 picks was a little bit too much. Although, it kind of gave a good lenience for those beginning players, but still, I think going down to 1 is pretty good. And yeah, it creates a lot more parity, and you can even use a lot of guys that you don't think would be that good, but they can actually come out and shine. Like an example, like in the Truck Series, whether say like we don't know where Roger's driving, but Roger Carruth could have a truck ride for next year, or I think he's kind of announced sort of.
Mm-hmm.
But you can like him, or even guys like Matt Mills and not Bailey Curry. Yeah, Bailey Curry also as well.
Sure.
Chase Purdy and even like Lane Riggs and some of these up and coming guys, or like picks that are guys that didn't make the playoffs last year. I think even those that finished outside, like in the 13th to 16th range, or even to 19th, they still have good runs, and that's just how NASCAR limits the playoffs. But still, that doesn't mean the guys outside the playoffs are going to be bad drivers. And even Xfinity Series, you can see, we had a surprise winner last year at Talladega with Jeb Burton. So
absolutely.
Maybe some of these picks that didn't make the playoffs, they could find a way to win last year. And I think another guy I'd harp on is Brandon Jones, the number 9 car. Last year was first year, didn't do as well, but maybe this year you can find a groove and bring that number 9 back into victory lane and have a good record this year.
Absolutely. We know we can. We've seen him in victory lane. And it's if he can find some consistency, there's no doubt about that. And one of the other, I would say, maybe major rule changes that maybe is going to impact the Cup side of things versus Xfinity and Truck is the limited driver picks in Xfinity and Truck due to the movement between series has always been based off the previous year's owner's points, whereas on the Cup side of things, it was just based on driver performance. And I'm going to match everything up together. So the Cup side is now going to be based off of the championship and owner's points from the previous year. So that being said, the really only major impact that will have is Josh Berry will be limited to one pick per segment on the Cup side of things. But like I said, that way it just creates everything's being created the same way across all three series. And that's how that'll go. We'll get the rules out, of course, written form and updated on the website by the end of the week here. And I'll send an email out to everybody as well. Anything else you want to chat about? What are you looking forward to this year? You going to any races? Any good stuff?
Yeah, hopefully in 2024 I'll be able to go to a few races. If not, the two big ones, of course. I live basically in North Carolina, so I kind of have to go to the 600 and the Roval. Last year, I don't know. I guess I felt a little lazy, which kind of sucks. But this year, hopefully, I want to check those two off my list again. I've been to the 600 that one funky year with the Chris Bushers flip in 22.
Yeah,
22. So it was an exciting one. I was very unprepared, and my ears were ringing because I didn't bring any head protection or ear protection. But I enjoyed all that sound. Like it's music to my ears, man.
Absolutely.
I think one other thing to mention is just give a shout out to my college of University of Charlotte and our 49ers racing team here. It's another racing team here. I'm involved with just a lot of college students, whether they're freshmen to all the way to senior age. Just give a shout out to them. And, we're trying to last year we placed top 10, and hopefully this year we can try and get a top 5. And, I think besides that, I'm just ready. Overall,
We're ready. We got the Clash this weekend. We're ready to get underway. I'm excited to get things kicked off here. No doubt about that. There is still time. If you want to get in on this year's Lap Traffic Fantasy League, we've got I think we're close to 80 participants right now. Would love to get that around the 100 mark. So if we can get another 20 players, that would be awesome. All you got to do is send an email to fantasylaptraffic@gmail.com. DM me, anything. I'll get you guided in the right direction, get you signed up. It's free. There's bragging rights as well as some Lap Traffic custom swag and trophies on the line, as Andrew is well aware. He got an awesome package towards the end of the year last year.
I still have to make a tweet about that.
Well, no better time than now.
Yep, that's correct.
Well, man, listen, thank you so much for coming on the show to help kick the season off. Good luck on your defense, and I'm sure we'll chat with you a couple times throughout the season.
Yeah, thank you so much, and hopefully just a little bit more advice for new people and existing people. Keep your eye on the prize, and hopefully everyone has fun. I think that's the most important thing, is everyone has fun for this fantasy league.
Absolutely. I love it. All right, man. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Yep, we'll see ya. All right, Lap Traffic Nation. That is going to do it for the first show of Season 8, Episode 327. Huge thanks to Jeff Gluck for being a part of the show, Aaron Studwell, and Andrew Yu. We'll see. We'll be back maybe next week, maybe the week after, preview Daytona, all of that good stuff. So excited to be here with y'all. Thank you all for the support. I appreciate you as always. Don't forget about the giveaways. Go follow on Twitter @LapTrafficPC. Tell your friends, subscribe, download iTunes, all of that good stuff. Don't get caught chasing the lucky dog. Tune in each and every week to the Lap Traffic Podcast. See ya.